Kevin, welcome to the Life on Purpose podcast. I'm so glad that you decided to come on and chat today about your business, about practical masculinity. So, why don't we go ahead and start? You can kind of tell me a little bit about practical masculinity, what it is, what your coaching practice is all about.
Absolutely, and it's a pleasure to be here. And I was looking forward to this podcast. In fact, I listened to your last podcast about death
Oh,
just a bit ago. And, practical masculinity is really like in life, we all have these little tiny little deaths in our lives. And sometimes we avoid those. And, sometimes we avoid stepping through the door into possibility. And obviously, your last podcast was about, a big transition, the final transition. But in life, we are moving through new doorways all the time. And practical masculinity is really where I focus on coaching men and men in relationship on stepping into their masculine and understanding and discovering what their role is in relationship and society, their purpose. These are things that most men actually do really well in avoiding. Men are always in movement. We're always making things happen. And actually, that's the masculine is very prevalent in women as well now. We're always pushing forward, getting things done, taking action, being resourceful, problem solving. And sometimes we miss an opportunity to be able to connect with who we really are and what our purpose is. Um, you know, Most young men have ambitions and you can ask somebody who's growing up 10, 12, 13, what do you want to be when you grow up? You ask somebody who's 50, what do you want to be when you grow up? And they don't really think there's any other possibility than the way they're living their life now. So when I focus with men, I'm really at helping them understand what their vision is and where they are now and closing that gap. And sometimes that vision is focused really on helping them with overcoming a challenge. And sometimes that vision, that coaching is focused on helping them go to the next level. And they see potential in their lives. They feel like the time's running out. They want to go to the next level. So it's really about possibility and connecting. That's what I love to do.
well, so I really think that it's important for people to kind of know and understand how you got to where you are, why you chose to coach men and to be a life coach for men and kind of this masculinity coach. What is your story? How did you get to do what you're doing right now?
So my story is the same, very similar to millions of men in North America. So, grew up in a family that promoted the positivity of importance of education. Spent a lot of time in college. Got a great job. Got a series of great jobs. Raised a family of two children. I was married for 28 years with the same woman for 30 years, and then I wasn't. And so then my life changed. So for a lot of different reasons, I had to step back and take a look at, wow, was I just sort of following, putting one foot in front of the other and just sort of doing what was expected of me? Really, was I in relationship? I tell people that I was the world's most successful average partner. I was an excellent average husband. I was excellent. I had average down to an art. It was like, hey, we get marks for average. I was there. And at some point I realized that maybe it'd be good to be exceptional in my relationship. I was pretty driven outside of my relationship, very achievement oriented, but I was not very exceptional in my relationship. And as a result, changes in my relationship happened and I left the marriage. So that resulted in a major reflection of my life to the point that I sold a portion of my business. I left the east coast of Canada. I was in Toronto, I'm Canadian, moved to the west coast of Canada, um, and I literally gave most things away, and I bought a minivan from my brother. I was 55 years of age. My daughter came with me. I put my golf clubs on my road bike, and I sent 7 boxes out to the West Coast. That's all I had. I put a flat screen TV, some papers and some clothing, and I drove out west. So I did what some people might do in their 20s when they say, I'm going to finish college and go and travel to Europe for a year. I essentially started new. And so I wouldn't suggest that would be the only way to sort of get in touch with yourself. There's lots of little baby steps you could take. And in fact, you don't even have to leave your relationship to discover yourself. But in my case, I left my relationship and left my life and started new. Came down and did a fantastic leadership program in San Diego called Ascension Leadership Academy. Woke me up, kind of started to think about my life, and then started to realize that the life lessons I had learned in my middle years, my middle ages, in my 50s, were transferable to others. And so it took me a long time to learn these lessons. Maybe there's a way in which I can impart them on others, but they wouldn't have to go through the suffering. They could feel the pain of adjustment, but they wouldn't have to suffer through some of the things I suffered through. So yeah, I've been a CEO for years, started 12 businesses, very business oriented. And I thought, well, it's time to maybe switch my focus. So I do two things. I coach, and I'm also a business advisor to women entrepreneurs. So I coach women about using their intuition to map out their strategy. I think women's intuition is very powerful in business, and sometimes they're trained not to listen to themselves, so they're trained to do things a certain way. So, and then I focus on I'm working with men, and I like tough clients, like clients that have like, I'm the CEO of this, and this is the way it is, and I'm not going to see a psychologist or a social worker, and this is what it is. My kids are this. And it's like, yeah. So I don't want to. I sort of, men who really are stuck my favorite, because they're just me. I'm just coaching me all the time.
Right, right. So how much of that would you say is what mainstream would call a midlife crisis? I mean, what exactly is a midlife crisis for? Because when you think about midlife crises, you think of men.
Hmm.
I mean, that's
So
kind of a
midlife,
typical
yeah, yeah.
man label.
So midlife crisis is a midlife awakening. It depends on what you do with that awakening. Do you go into crisis, or do you step into possibility? So sometimes we do both. So we have this typical perspective of the midlife crisis, like the guy's 50 years of age, he's successful, and then bam, he has an affair, and bam, he's cashed out his 401k, and he's got himself a little sports car, driving and then his girlfriend is 30, and it's like he's living life. So that is a way of expressing your yourself at that time of your life. Um, Ultimately, what's really going on is somebody is questioning questioning the decisions they have made and the place they have arrived in their life. And often they don't have the support to be able to work through that. So they're questioning, gee, is this the marriage I chose? Is this really what I wanted? My relationship with my kids isn't that great. Did I really choose this career? What are my options? And so these other things become a distraction for them, a way of them having a bit of an endorphin hit, like, I'm going to live life. I'm going to get out there. I'm going to date lots of women, and I'm just going to feel things. So they use this situation and these stimuli as a way of pumping them up a little bit, because they are in a place where they are feeling very lost, and they are disconnected, and they are experiencing pain. And so when we experience pain, we self-medicate with things around us. And that may be a way in which they're doing that. But it is an awakening.
So
And
how much of that is kind of a long-term effect of not feeling the things that they should have been feeling all along, or avoiding feeling things that they should have been feeling all along? So it's kind of this build up, or this tipping point that you reach after years and years and years of not really giving credence to the things that maybe were coming up along the way that they should have been dealing with.
so that's an incredibly insightful question. And it is exactly what happens, is that the awakening is about a rush of feeling, a feeling of discontent, a feeling of like overwhelming, perhaps despair, a feeling of confusion. But if they really thought about it, the things that have led to that were really prevalent. They're there every single day. My ex-wife used to say to me after I left the marriage, she said to me, if you can't choose me each day, then you shouldn't have been. If you can't choose me each day, you shouldn't have been with me. And I brought that into my practice, which is really to say, like in the morning and the evening when you're with your partner, if you choose into that relationship when you wake up, like, hi, baby, how are you? Hi, sweetheart. Like, nice to see you. Like, I'm glad I woke up today. So appreciative that I'm in a relationship with you. No matter what happens during that day, nothing's going to interfere with that relationship. And if you go to bed at the same time, which most people don't anymore, and you roll over and you say, I love you, you're reinforcing this. So what she was really saying was that, somewhere along the line, you stop choosing our
Right.
marriage. And when you stop choosing something, there's room for something to come in between you. And that's what happened to me. I allowed things to come in between our relationship. And so that speaks to mindfulness and being aware of what you have in your life, and being aware of what's troubling you, being aware that you're not sure of the answer to something, and being aware that you could use some support, and to understand that that's not a sign of weakness, that's actually a sign of strength. People talk about, well, a man doesn't talk about his feelings. And I say, well, a man who is cowardly doesn't talk about his feelings. And they go, whoa, whoa, whoa. It's like, what's the downside of talking about your feelings? And they dig in and they go, well, I feel kind of embarrassed and, wished I knew the answer. Someone might make fun of me, or they'll, and it's like, and would it take courage to be able to face that and still, yeah, well, expressing your feelings is an act of courage. It's not an act of weakness.
Right. And
That's
I think that, I mean, that needs to be kind of a societal change as we kind of look at it as a sign of weakness, especially, I mean, I have two sons, one of which is 12 and one of which is 3. So he's, the 3-year-old's obviously not there yet, but, you know, we kind of have this tendency to tell our boys, okay, don't cry, buck up, don't show these emotions. Well, where is this balance of, kind of having this typical masculinity as far as like taking care of business, whatever, but also having this other side of being able to express yourself and express your emotions? There seems to be like this kind of fine line and this fine balance of how to raise your boys to be able to be both.
I think for me, and I have a 28-year-old son who's a professional athlete, and he's a pretty sensitive guy, but he's in a pretty tough sport. He's a hockey
Yeah.
player. So, there's been lots of, in my life, there's been lots of opportunity for him to experience pain. But I think he's well-rounded enough that just, I think the secret to that, the answer to that question is really about the expression of pain. So if that young guy is crying about something, he's experiencing pain, emotion, something. If he's aware of what he's experiencing and he puts some words to it, it doesn't make him less manly. He's still, it's like, I'll give you an example. So it's like if you bang your knee and you break, it's like, wow, and you start screaming and yelling, that, and you're in pain. That looks slightly different for a guy if he bangs his knee and goes, whoa, that hurts. Like I am, yeah. It's something about putting words to it that allow him to be able to separate himself from the pain. So for men, it's an awareness of what they feel. It's sort of like the key. It's not that they don't get to feel it, and it's not that they have to hide it. It's just like, I feel pretty annoyed right now. I am
Mm-hmm.
frustrated. Now, there's nothing non-manly about that. And so to me, it's really about separating out the experience from the feeling and being able to talk about it. Um,
So you're saying that sometimes they don't even recognize the feeling.
no idea. I think men have 5 emotions. Like really, they have anger. Okay, so it's like, whoa. They have frustration. It's like, there's something going on. No, I'm fine. I'll sit in the car. They're frustrated. They have indifference, which is like, they just, whatever, they are just disconnected. They sometimes have excitement, like, yay, the football game's on. Yes, there's an excitement. And they may have a moment of laughter, like, oh, that was pretty funny. We're not that, like, that's it. Like, if you
Mhm.
look up feeling words, if you Google right now feeling words, there's probably 100 feeling words. We got about 5 in our vocabulary. So sometimes And sometimes and we don't really talk about sadness. That doesn't come up very often, and we don't talk about discouraging, being discouraged, or um, emotions that usually come out. Some of those emotions come out, by the way, in terms of anger. Anger is like a secondary emotion. You're usually feeling hurt and attacked or affronted by something, and then you express it in anger. It's like, well, where's the anger coming from? When you realize it's like, I'm kind of sad, bummed out, annoyed. Well, we talk about those feelings before you express your anger. So you're right. It's about expanding your vocabulary and being aware of what's going on in your body. One of the best ways to doing that is to not think about feelings, but to actually think about what's going on in the person's body. So your 12-year-old son, did you say he was 12?
Yeah, he's 12.
And he's sort of trying to figure himself out. When he gets a little flustered, instead of saying, what are you feeling? Because it may be uncomfortable, say, what's going on in your body right now? Tell me about what's in your body. And it's like, it's hard in the beginning. It's like, well, I'm feeling kind of tight in my chest or something. It's like I'm restless. And then those bodily experiences are often translated into emotions. So there's this field of study now called physical intelligence, which is looking at the chemistry of the body when we have certain thoughts and certain feelings. And the body and the mind are so interconnected. So sometimes for men, it's like, if you sometimes in men's groups, people will start off by what's going on in your body. They don't even know how to express the emotion. They don't even know, oh, I guess I'm kind of sad today. Maybe their breathing is shallow. Maybe they're feeling restless, and it's like they can put an emotion onto it after they get in touch with their body.
That's really interesting, kind of the mind body connection. And, because there's also studies out there where, children oftentimes, if they're feeling anxiety, they'll say, I have a stomach ache. So
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of the same thing where if somebody who's not, and I don't want to use this word like to offend anybody, but not as emotionally intelligent as others might say, my chest hurts or my stomach hurts or whatever, when it's really an emotion that's trying to manifest itself and I don't have a word for it.
Well, it's interesting. There was a time in my life I was vice president of a behavioral healthcare company, and we launched a disability management program, and it was a different kind of program. It was helping employees and helping organizations around absenteeism. And the physicians who actually put the program together became very aware that the number one predictor of whether or not somebody would be at work or not wasn't physical. It was the quality of their relationship with their supervisor. If you took stress, and so what happens is that if your relationship with people around you is not great, it starts manifesting itself in your body. So
Mm-hmm.
since there wasn't a way to be able to say, I am really stressed around my boss, all of a sudden now it's like, well, the heart palpitations going to work. What's going on with me? I'm feeling these things. And you go to the physician, they write you a note, and they say you've got some sort of generalized anxiety or something, get medicated. But the issue is that at work, the relationship, the quality of relationships in the environment is so toxic that your body starts reacting. And there's no systems in place in the workplace to be able to deal with that. So I guess I must be sick. And so then you start following the path toward, sickness and diagnosis. So it's the same way when someone has a stomach ache or a 12-year-old doesn't want to go to school. I don't want to school. I think I have the flu. And then 2 hours later, they're in front of the computer playing video games. It's like, it's really no doubt he had a stomach ache. It's not like he made it up. Like, I have to fake stomach ache so I don't go to school. But the anxiety and apprehension about going to school was so strong that it manifested itself in some sort of physical symptoms. So you're right, there's this mind-body connection. And we're talking about men and the difficulty in men in tapping into their feelings. Tapping into their body is a good starting point.
That's really interesting. Well, let's talk about, like, conversely, there's this idea of, especially in kind of the age that we're living in now, this idea of toxic masculinity, where your masculinity could be toxic to another person. Can you talk about that just a little bit, kind of that idea?
Mm-hmm. So my take on toxic masculinity, it is like it's like it's like the masculinity on steroids. You know, it's like it's hyper masculinity, and it's the elements of masculinity that when they are exaggerated or emphasized become injurious to other people. So just as you can become somebody's can become addicted to fitness and say like, I don't, your fitness program is actually not good for your health. It's because it is an embellishment of blowing up a magnification of some aspect of your fitness program. So toxic masculinity, it's a tough one because I actually don't believe the behaviors that they exhibit are masculine behaviors. Now, when you are overbearing and oppressive and controlling and hypersexual, those actually, that's not particularly masculine.
Right.
But we look for a word, you know. I mean, I understand how it sort of fits into society in terms of how we're using it, but to me, that's somebody who hasn't evolved a sense of what it is to be masculine. And you see this, by the way. That here's an example in sort of the intimacy world. Someone can use the word dominant, and they'll say he's very dominant, and some women will say, I look for a dominant man, and dominant in the bedroom. Um, but many people's idea, many men's idea of like I'm a dominant, I'm a dom, is they're actually not dominant, they're domineering. Dominance doesn't suppress and control. It's not a great word, but it essentially means that I am in my power and I'm in a place of being able to influence. There's a way in which I can influence people around me. I have some charisma. I have an energy around me. If you really do, then you have no need to be domineering. You have no need to control your partner. You know, she said, oh, she always meets these dominant guys. I usually think she probably always meets these unhealthy guys. They're deeply insecure. And so they have to control in that relationship because that's a way in which they feel good about themselves. More often than not, over control is a reflection of somebody's deep insecurity. So going back to your toxic masculinity, my my belief is that these are men who are deeply insecure. They have to act out and behave in a certain way. There's a script that's playing on for them that they have to align with because they really truly don't know what it's like to be grounded and know what their role is in society, and it shows up in ways that's, you know, offensive to other people.
And unhealthy, sure.
Absolutely, and you can have the same as toxic femininity as well.
Oh,
I mean that.
absolutely. I think too much of anything is not necessarily a
Yeah,
good thing.
yeah,
I mean,
yes.
on both sides of the coin, no
Hmm.
question. Um, it seems though that it may be more geared towards attacking men these days more so than women. Um,
Oh, it's definitely
Although I
more
don't think it's looked upon, and it hasn't been looked upon for it to be a good thing for women to have too much power in a situation or too much control in a situation. And I think it's really kind of unhealthy to look at it being a good thing for either a man or a woman to be too domineering in any situation.
right. It really speaks to balance, doesn't it? It really
Right.
speaks to, and it really, and an ability to move, you know, from the masculine and the feminine or along the continuum. Because
Right.
when two people are in the same place, I'll give you an example. I have a client where um, works long hours and when comes home, a very senior position, comes home, sort of wants to sit for a little bit, have a glass of wine, maybe the meal's prepared, kind of an old school, you know, and that's just the way in which he believes it should be structured. His wife is younger, they have young children. And at the end of the day, when her husband comes home, she wants to be able to sort of sit down and go, yes, I'm done for the day, you know, take over for me. He doesn't want that. And there's conflict. And the conflict is because they both are in their feminine at the same time. He wants to be served, he wants to receive, he wants to be taken care of. She wants to receive, be taken care of. And so there's this conflict, and it's because they're occupying the same space at the same time. The opportunity for him is to come into the house, maybe decompress for a few minutes, just sit down, and then say, okay, let me, what can I do? Where are the kids? What's going on? What are you doing? Want me to prep with you? Making dinner? Or what's, as soon as he does that, the relationship just transforms. She's interested in hanging out with him. She wants to go to bed early with him. So it isn't even that they're not getting along. It's just that they're occupying the same space. And also that's happening now in society a lot because we have encouraged our daughters to be professionals, to make things happen, to be independent. And a lot of men are struggling with that because they are having difficulty with a strong woman. These alpha feminine women cause a lot of men some difficulty because the men do not have to react. They don't know how to react. They think they're in competition with the woman. So they think there's another masculine presence. And so there's this, we have to figure out where the hierarchy is. And sometimes that man feels emasculated in that relationship because his wife is fully making things happen. And often that's just really not an appreciation of the other side of the energy of the person, that extremely alpha, positive, make it happen woman actually does have an extremely feminine goddess divine energy. She's just having a difficult time tapping into that in relationship, and he doesn't know how to get at that.
Mm-hmm.
And then sometimes she doesn't know how to get at his feminine so that he isn't disconnected, and he never talks to me, never says anything. It's like, how do I get at that side of him? And it's that's one of the biggest challenges in relationships. People don't know how to find that the other side of the other person, or she can't say, she is so in her power making things happen. She says, like, I just want him to look after me. I just want to feel looked after. Like, I don't want another child. I don't want to be doing all these things for him. I want him to look after me. I want him to say, hey, tonight we're going out, and not have them ask me where we're going. I want to say, I booked some place for us to have dinner. I pick some food up. You just sit down. I just want to be taken care of. I don't want him to say, hey, what do you feel like doing tonight? Oh, I don't want to have to make another decision. You make the decision. But she has to be able to receive too, because if he makes a decision and it's not the best one for her, she can't go like, oh, that's not the restaurant. That's not the food I felt like. Otherwise, we got
So
different.
really, it's just about communication and being able to meet each other's needs, kind of understanding what the other's needs are, um, and trying to have some sort of middle ground and meet those. But I think communication's oftentimes difficult, especially for men.
Men tell you things sometimes non-verbally.
Right.
And but you're right, it does distill down to communication and connection, right? I mean, if really you're sharing a house with somebody else, you're in a relationship with somebody else, there needs to be an exchange of information. Now, it doesn't have to necessarily come in the format that you're used to or you want, because you can't force a man to speak to you a certain way, but you can talk about what works for you in terms of what kind of messaging you're able to receive, and at least let them know what works for you. A really basic one that people have been talking about for 10 years, this is love languages, just understanding what the other person's love language is. There's 5 love languages, and if your idea your love language is what you really need is physical touch, and your partner's love language is acts of service. He's out fixing the door, the garage door is off its hinges, the garbage is going. He's like, and you're like, oh, can he stop being busy? Can I just sit on the couch and have him put his arm around me? And then you bring that up, and he's like, I love you. Like, I am totally in relationship with you. So sometimes just understanding, I just want to let you know, you can do half of those things and spend some time on the couch because this is what I like. And he might go, oh, and sometimes it's just simply understanding how you're wired.
It's so funny. You're describing my relationship right now.
Yeah.
My husband's love language is acts of service,
Mhm.
and mine is not.
Mhm.
So it's really it's funny. I was sitting here giggling listening to you describe that because that's totally us to a T.
Well, I had my ex-wife Leslie was a total act of service. Like, there would be entertainment, there would be parties, there would be dinners and shop. Like, she looked after me so well. And I just didn't know how to tell her that's not actually the way to look after me. I'll have
Yeah.
a grilled cheese sandwich and some cuddles, like some make love. Let's just hang out.
Yeah.
But I didn't know how to say that. So she was knocking herself out as she did, as your mother did, like so capable and competent and such a beautiful force. And to me, sometimes that was overwhelming because I didn't get to be with her. I didn't get to experience her. And that was, so it's the same as your, relation. But I didn't know what I knew now. I was just like, oh, duh, I'm not happy or something. We just, that's when the old
Very
one is like,
basic emotions
well, it's
around
like
it.
you ask I run a program for I'm just actually building it now for women on online dating, and you ask um, people to sort of describe what they want in their life, and then describe what they had in their life, and then I will ask somebody, I'll say, so given that that was your previous relationship, what role did you play in the breakdown of that relationship? This is a great question to ask men when somebody's on online dating. They talk to them a little bit, and then they say, like, tell me about your previous relationship. And they say, oh, we drifted apart. It's a classic guy. We just, we didn't see, we drifted apart. It's like, okay. And then I say, ask them what role that man played. What role did you play in that breakdown? If he can't answer that, if he can't take responsibility, and that's a warning sign. It means he doesn't know that he had any role. She got, we just didn't see eye to eye. She had an affair. All like it was. There's no responsibility for him. If he can take responsibility, then the next question is asked. And so, what kind of work have you done personally to make sure that doesn't show up in your next relationship? That's usually the killer question because, well, what do you mean? Have you like? It's just gonna. If that's the way you were, how you can make sure that doesn't show up again? And if they
Right.
say,
So
yeah,
a part of this idea of practical masculinity is in and of itself taking responsibility for your own behaviors when, you know, I
you
think it's
got it.
really difficult to do that
Okay,
as a
so
man. You
you
never want to feel like you fail. And knowing what I know about my husband, I have a brother, I have, my sons, none of them like to admit to being wrong or that they've failed at something. It's like it kills them.
okay, so you are like we're digging into some good stuff here because this concept of responsibility, it does not mean blame or fault.
Right.
It does not. So if you are blaming somebody or you're afraid or you think you're to be blamed, you don't want to be blamed yourself, that's not responsibility. So let me give you a definition of responsibility. There's an equation that says E, which is the event, plus R, and R can stand for response or it can stand for reaction, equals an outcome. So an event is presented, we decide to react as men, whoa, we'll get an outcome. We decide to respond thoughtfully, we get a different outcome. So responsibility is recognizing that no matter what the event, no matter how egregious the behavior of the other person, there was something you can take responsibility for that would impact the outcome.
So, and oftentimes that's the reaction.
Yeah, if they're reacting, it's like maybe I should have just thought through this and responded. Irrespective, it's recognizing that no matter what comes out, what that outcome was, there was something they could have done differently. So it really is the opposite of being in victim. In victim, oh my God, look what happened to me. Victim, oh my God, this has happened. The election was stolen from me. All these things, look at the world is against me versus, wait a second, what's my response to those things? Because as soon as I respond, not only is the outcome different, could even be micro, like a little bit of outcome, but I feel different. I feel different. Something's happening to me all the time. And my Maria, she's always chewing me up. She's always giving me a hard time. We're always fighting. Like, it's like, yeah. So I say, well, what is that you might want to do differently? That because you're giving away your power. As soon as you tell somebody that, as soon as you're pointing the finger at somebody, you did
Mm-hmm.
this, you've just given up your power. How opposite of the masculine concept of that is. Because when we're talking about masculinity, we're talking about being present, being, in action, and making something happen? What about making harmony happen? What about making diffusing the situation? Those are masculine activities. You don't have to point your finger and sit there and sulk. And so you said it exactly. Like the responsibility word is like it's the first step. There's three pieces in creating a harmonious, a resilient, intimate relationship for men. Accept responsibility, take responsibility, not even accept it. Just like choose responsibility, choose to be in responsibility. Next one is um, choose honesty, complete honesty. Because we live in a world where you're half truths. We're living in half truths all the time. And the
I
third
couldn't
one,
agree with that more.
and the third one is explore vulnerability. And vulnerability, we talked earlier about, is associated with courage. So, be courageous, be honest, and take responsibility. Even if your responsibility in your mind is like, well, I take 2% of responsibility for this breakdown, she can have 98%. The only thing you can change is your 2%. You cannot change the behavior of the other person. The only way it'll change is if you choose to change your own behavior. And then by virtue of that, the dynamic is changed. We call it the dance in couples therapy. The dance started, the event happens, we go into the dance. You did this, you did that. We get really comfortable with the dance, and there's really nothing that we're trying to prove the other person's wrong. We're right, we're wrong, we're right. By virtue of the fact that the relationship's in difficulty at that moment in time, neither of you have chosen to put the relationship as a sacred thing, and both of you are actually not serving the relationship. So there's no winner in that one.
So
Being
in
right.
reality, it's just like anything in life. If you turn it around and focus on only the things that you can control, it's going to make it a lot easier to communicate and kind of solve the problem, solve the issue, solve the breakdown, um, and take responsibility for what it is that you can control in it.
Totally, the great example, you're totally right on. The greatest example, road rage. You're in the car, somebody does something. Now, your reaction is going to lead to a certain outcome. To somehow suggest that that breakdown, the rage that you have, that is running up behind them, flashing the lights, whatever, is somehow something that they did is a little bizarre in my mind. It's like, well, they did do something. Now, what are you choosing to do? And to suggest that all of these things that had then happened in the sequence were their fault. It's like, well, since when did you give up your control to the other driver? You can just simply, hey, this guy really annoyed me. I'm going to pull off for a second. Time for a rest stop because I don't want to be in the same road as this guy. He's whatever. But I mean, I wish I had learned that lesson a long time ago
And then
because
to
I
kind
was
of walk yourself also through the scenario of what kind of good outcome is this going to get me?
my
Usually just it's not a good
no,
outcome.
no. It's a lack of self-discipline and a letting. It's like I'm going to
Right.
let this go. My brother used to say something to me when we would drive because I would get annoyed. He said, "Look, if they have, don't get involved, don't interact with them because they have much more practice at being a jerk than you do. Like you're just going to
Right.
be a jerk now, but you're not a jerk very often. Many of these people driving that are being jerks, they do it every day. They are
Hmm.
experts at being jerks. You'll never be able to compete with them. Your
Right.
moment of
A
jerkness
waste of
will
time.
never it'll never master it. They'll out jerk you all the time. So
Hmm.
it's about knowing yourself and taking responsibility. But you have highlighted a few things today, and you've highlighted the importance of men being more aware of what they're feeling, and if that's important, that means really understanding what's happening in their body. I mean, you raised great questions about the importance of connection, being in relationship with the person, not just being isolated by yourself. Communication, how important that is, and also that people communicate in different ways. Talk about what love language, what way works for you, and then also responsibility. That's like those are really powerful things, and they're simple, but they require you to break some bad habits.
Right. And I see I'm a very big observer of people. I love to observe people. I love to observe relationships, whether it's friendships, romantic relationships, whatever it is. I'm kind of an observer of human nature. And one thing that I've kind of picked up on and I wouldn't say I'm very old, late 30s, but in my lifetime, is that in real, like men in relationships typically build this idea that I need to provide. I need to create a stable environment. I need to make XYZ amount of money. I need to have this amount of success that defines them. And one missing piece typically is it takes them a long time to realize that in putting their focus 98% on those things, you've missed a big chunk of connection with your partner. And sometimes, you know, and I've seen like the breakdowns of friends' relationships, family members' relationships, where it's too late when they realize that they've spent a lot of time putting too much focus on those things. It's too late.
Have you ever heard the statistic that women think about leaving a marriage for 7 to 9 years before they actually leave? And that speaks
I
to
have not, but it doesn't surprise me. No.
men think about 6 months to a year.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think this is working. Usually it involves somebody
Yeah.
else in their life, and that's the impetus. But women will be patiently waiting. Okay, yeah, no, let's maybe go to couples counseling. No, try this. Patiently waiting, but when they decide to leave, they're never coming back. A
Mm-hmm.
man can actually 6 months and then go, oh, I kind of made a mistake coming and check in, and then checking in on their ex-wife, and it's like, what happened? Like, she's not, it's like, it's like she left the relationship 3 years before. She's hanging in there. She's been thinking about it for years.
Right.
But women are very patient. They're very dutiful. They're very attentive to the children's well-being. Men can be a little bit more impulsive in their decisions. So you're right about this is a progressive kind of slow degradation of the relationship. And they think about what you just said. They think, this is my role, a provider, generate some wealth, create the house. But where in there is the focus on the relationship? Because
Mm-hmm.
1 + 1 should equal 3. You, me, together have this magical thing called relationship that's sacred. If I'm focusing on what I think I have to do, and you're patiently waiting, doing your best to make, to get along, the relationship got lost there. It's like, it's just nothing special happening. So men are clueless. And I don't mean it like, like we're clueless, but we're amazing. I mean, I'm not down on men. I mean, that's why I do this work. But I am. Many times I say something like that, I'm really just referring to myself. I mean, like I said, I was clueless.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was,
Absolutely.
and it's because no one really taught us. I ask guys this one. I like to ask guys this one. What do you do better now than you didn't do 15 years ago before you're married? And I'm a better golfer. I'm pretty good with my finances. Like, oh, I rebuilt my 66 Mustang. I am. It's like, wow, what did it take to be good at that? Oh, I spent a lot of hours. I'm always online. I'm in a car club. It's great. I said, so what have you done in your relationship now that's better than 20 years ago? Let's talk about lovemaking. Are you a better lover than when you were 28? They just, their eyes roll. What do you mean? Like, you get in. So, well, look at all that you've done to get these great returns and all these other hobbies, but you haven't spent any time on the relationship. How would you expect it to be better? In fact, if you've ignored it, how would you expect it to be even nearly as good as when you first met your partner? Like, that's an unrealistic expectation. I'll
Right.
neglect something while I focus on other things, and then I got irritated that we're sitting around watching football and telling my buddy, like, we're not having sex very often. I cannot. She's lost her appetite. I don't know what's wrong with her. It's like, this is the classic. I mean, I know men who start Googling, perimenopausal. Maybe she needs some hormone treatment. It's like, that's the ultimate in not taking responsibility. What's wrong with my partner, that she doesn't want to make love to me? It's like, what are you not doing in relationship that can actually change your interest? That's a different
So it's
mindset.
kind of
That's
turning
wisdom.
it around and saying, okay, what can I do? What is this extra effort that I can put forth that will help remedy this situation of lack of intimacy,
We could
physical
remove
intimacy?
we could remove the word extra. and just
Yeah.
say, what can I do?
What effort can I
What
put forth?
effort can I make? It's like I mean, there is, the old saying that when does foreplay begin for a woman? And it's for a man to start foreplay. It's 5 minutes after the last time that you made love. That's when a woman wants foreplay to start. And if that means it's 7 days of foreplay, because that's the next time you're going to find time together because your kids, then it's 7 days of foreplay. A man needs to live in foreplay with his partner. It's a lot more fun too. It's a lot more fun to walk into the kitchen when there's something happening, or sort of, and just brush up against your partner and give them a kiss in the neck, pull them in and say, "Ooh, where did that come from?" It's not. It's to step up, and when she's doing something and realize the dishes are cleared and the dishwasher's loaded, and to do the blue jobs without being asked. It's like, wow, did you put that? Wow, when did that happen? To bring the laundry in, and like those, like when you do those things, I say to guys, like, there's nothing in your life that you can do that requires this little effort to give you this amount of return. If you get up, if you say to yourself 4 times today, I'm going to text my partner, tell her I love her, I miss her. 4 times. I'm going to do it at 9, to watch what happens that evening. And this is like, how long does it have to take a tech baby? I'm sitting in a management team meeting. This is so boring. I'm thinking, I'm on this Zoom call. It's killing me. And I'm just thinking about you on the weekend and how much fun we had. I can't wait to come home. Most people can text as fast as they can speak now. Anybody younger than me, if you got that randomly in the middle of the afternoon, like you're like, whoa, oh babe, I'm, in regular non-COVID times, I'm running late. I can't take the kids to soccer. It would be a lifesaver if you grab them. I'll pick them up after, and I want to grab some food on the way home, and I'm getting your favorite whatever sushi. Yeah, I'll be there. I'll take the kids and home with the sushi. Like, does that hard? If ask a guy, here's a good one for ask your friend, any guy, to read out the last 3 messages he sent to his wife. They're usually like, can't get that. Can you grab this? Pick that. Brought my coffee. Like, there's nothing loving in them. And I'll add babe, dear, I love you. So I say, how much time does that take? Oh, 3 minutes. What's the return? I'll get home, like, we're feeling pretty good. It's like, you got 2 hours for 3 minutes. Like, can you do anything else in your life for 2 minutes that gives you 3 hours of bliss? No. So it's a big part of this is
Right.
educating men. It's not like these guys, it's not like men are like opposed to being connected. They just, who's taught them about that, the value of that?
Well, that's okay. So then let me ask you this. What responsibility is it of mine as a mother to help my son be a good partner when it's time for him to date and get married, and what responsibility, what can I do as a
Okay.
mom? What can my husband do as a father to raise a man who's going to be a good partner?
Let them look after you. Stop looking after them.
I really like that because we talk about this all the time in our house. My kids do their own laundry. They cook for themselves. My oldest struggles. He's got this tendency of wanting to be taken care of a lot, and I have to remind myself often to push him to do things for himself.
How many years is this your second marriage?
No, this is
Okay,
my
same.
first.
First one. Okay,
Yep,
so there's 12.
first and only so far.
So he was the only child for 9 years.
No, I have a middle. Well, I have
Okay.
three. So I have
Okay.
a 12-year-old boy, 10-year-old girl, 3-year-old boy.
Okay. So how was the control?
10.
Cool.
So they're
10.
2.5 years apart, the boy and the girl.
Okay. So why do you think he's like that?
I don't know.
Do you think he
But
woke
I
up one
mean,
day and
because
said, "Bring it on"?
maybe he's the first, and I, was a
Right.
new mom, and oh, trust me, I've already decided that a lot of this is me and what I did and did not do for the
Yeah.
first couple of years of his life.
So, without getting too personal, are you the primary caregiver of those three, or is your husband actively involved?
Oh, he's very,
People have
yeah,
different.
he travels a lot, but when he's here, he's very hands-on, very active.
So first of all, credit to you for having the 12-year-old do as much as he can, because there is an adage that says once a boy becomes 12, you don't do anything for them that he can do for himself. Obviously, you're driving him around, and obviously, if he's got a sort of a uni thought about what food is, you can broaden his horizons, and he's not just going to eat, you know, macaroni and cheese every day, because that he can make it. But the more he can do, the more that that he gets to do, because then he's actually gets the feeling of being taken care of. Now you see this exaggerated in single moms. There's a certain amount of guilt. I'm raising 2 kids, and the boy gets to be 14 or 15, and he's still expecting from his mom for her to do everything. And you think, well, why is it? And it's because underlying, if you get right down to it, it's like, my kids are everything. I want them to have a happy life. I don't like to see them upset. He hasn't had a dad, and there hasn't been anybody around, and so I need to look after my kids. And so somehow associated with him being independent and doing things and expecting him to do things is some sort of like that I'm not being a good mom.
Yeah.
In fact, think through, if you do everything for him, when he goes into a relationship at 19, 18, he's going to expect to find someone who'll do everything for him. So he will be a man child. He'll be expecting you. And men, children they're not particularly sexy. I mean, you do not
Right.
want to sleep with someone you're looking after all the time. It's like he's a baby, he's a kid.
Right.
He'll get to be 30 years of age, and she'll be making all of this doctor's appointments reminding him of that, and then it'll be like time for lovemaking, and she'll be fantasizing about, the fire chief, the capable guy who, is just
Right.
all about looking after his princess. And he'd be like, with this, you've got a handsome husband, he's beautiful and everything. Yeah, but he's kind of like my kid.
Right.
So,
Right.
and he thinks that's what the dynamic should be, that he will find a woman who will look after him like his mom. But it's not a wrong thing, and it happens in many cultures, and it actually works very well. You can go around the
Yeah.
world and say, like, my mama's boy, and then he's looked after by his wife, and if it works, it works. But when it doesn't work, there's usually because something wasn't instilled on him in
It's
terms of where,
detrimental.
yeah. So, I
Absolutely.
mean, the fact that you're aware that your son has a tendency to want to be looked after, beautiful. And the fact that that he's doing a lot of stuff on his own, that's amazing. And so you just have to keep reminding him of how amazing it feels when he does something for you and for others on his own.
Right. Right.
So I just had this conversation with a friend last night who was very upset. She went shopping. She's a 16-year-old boy. She's a single mom. Went shopping, got all the groceries. Comes back and says, "Can you help me unload the dish? Unload the. Can you bring some bags in from the car?" And he opposed her. Yeah, yeah, I'll get to it. I'll get to it. I'll get to it. And then he fell asleep. It was late in the evening, and it was like so upsetting. And I said, "What about if you, this? And it's easy for me to sit there, tell people or suggest something. So what if you're saying, well, I'm going out to get shopping. I'm really tired. Here's the deal. I'll do the shopping rather than you come for me. But when I get home, when I show up, it'd be amazing if you unloaded the car. And
So
what did you do?
set the expectations
Yeah, and
early.
exactly. And what
Yeah.
did you just hear me say? I said that when you come home, I'll unload the car. And we on the same page about that? Yep, yep. Okay.
Yeah.
You come in, you pull in, you bring one small bag in, you put it on the counter and say, all of the groceries are in the trunk. Um, and and guess what? You don't take them out of the trunk. And if he falls asleep and the food is ruined, you say the next morning, what happened? Did you get the groceries away? Oh, I forgot. There's a lot of frozen food in there. It's melted. And I just, that's $22. I need $22 to replace that. No,
Yeah.
Matt,
So
take
not
you
like setting the responsibilities and
actual
then
consequences.
the
That's what would happen
yeah,
if you're a
expectations.
young guy and you order chicken wings and you leave them out all night because you fell asleep after hanging out with the guys. You're not getting up the next morning and going. You might message your mom and say, like, I'm not sure about, like, if that's chicken stays overnight. She says you got to throw it out. And the guy's last, I got to buy another. I bought enough for 2 days. I guess I have to buy more chicken wings out of it. It's just
Yeah.
life. But
Right.
if it's like, oh, the food is ruined, I'll go to the store and get it. Or here's the items that were ruined. I'm going to run some dry clean. If you just go in and pick it up at whatever this supermarket is, like, then it's like, oh, this is real world stuff. And but it doesn't have to be a fight. It doesn't have to be a fight. If you're the fights usually come because there's resentment built up. My daughter's
Right.
an amazing life coach, and she talks about anger relationships being about the lack of boundary setting. So you have a boundary, it's crossed, you have a boundary, it's crossed, and you don't deal with it and set that boundary with your partner. And eventually, there's resentment building up, and they do something 2 years later, and you can remember the 3 times they did it 2 years before, and you are furious. The guy's going like, what happened there? Like, and then you bring up, well, last year when your mom was, I was like, that was last year. Like, what are we
Right.
doing talking about that? Because you didn't, the boundary wasn't set, the understanding wasn't there to avoid conflict, to do whatever, it was deferred. And then all of a sudden you've got this resentment. So usually breakdown with kids is that somebody's got resentment somewhere, and
Yeah,
some
sure.
boundary hasn't been honored, and you didn't stick with it, and now you're blowing up. Like, no, you're not going out tonight. Oh,
Well, and I think just as in relationships, and I love this phrase, and I love this idea is that you teach people how to treat you. By setting those boundaries and knowing what they're allowed to get away with, you are teaching them how to treat you basically, and what how far they can go. And I think that's the same thing in relationships, and I think that's the same thing in parenting as well.
absolutely. And same thing in dating.
Yeah.
Man says, I'll text you in the morning. He doesn't text you unless next thing you know, you've texted in the afternoon. How's your morning?
Yeah.
Well, he's not going to, she's just going to reach out to me. Good. I don't have to do the work. Well, I
Right.
really liked him. I really liked him. It's like, if you really liked him, then you can get to show him what it's like to be in relationship with somebody who values themselves. And if he didn't
Right.
message you, I guess the next day or so, you're going to unmatch him. He's not for you. You can't train him to treat you like the queen. He's either got it or not. So it's the same with your kids. It's like there's natural consequences, and that's when families really flow. And they just, because everybody knows the clear expectations, and there's no like cruelty or punishment or like getting them back or wrong or right. It's just like, this needed to be done. This didn't get done. This is what happened. And it's like doing laundry. Have you ever had, I mean, you must have friends. My son was like this growing up until we taught him how to do, organize his laundry. But it was like, I don't have any socks. Mom, I don't have any shit. It's like, where's your laundry? Did you bring your laundry up to the laundry room? Did you throw it in? No. Pull a pair of dirty ones out. Oh, gross. I don't need underwear. It's like, they get it, as
Right.
opposed to, oh, I'll run just a second, I'm gonna get you some. And how many people do that? How many people drive their kids around like they're going to do something, I'm going to do some shop. Mom, I gotta go see Fred today, can you drive me? Mom, it's like, actually I have plans this afternoon, so maybe they can come over here. I
Yeah.
don't want to go. It's like, and then you get in the car and drive.
Hmm.
And then you say later, and then 2 days later, he wants something and you blow up like, I'm always driving you. He's like, what's the problem? Like,
Where did that come
you
from?
you do always drive me. And that's why I keep asking you, because like,
Yeah.
is there something that's changing? I didn't get the memo.
Right.
So it comes back again to your comment earlier about responsibility.
Hmm.
It's like, if it's to be, it's up to me. And because
Absolutely.
you can't control it.
Wow.
So
I mean, all very, very, I guess the word is practical, practical
yeah,
when it comes to, what it is to be in relationships as a masculine man or as a man. I mean, I don't even, how would you define masculine, I guess?
well, first
So
of
to
all,
end this conversation, define masculine for me.
let me tell you, the masculine feminine terminology is kind of going out of vogue. It's like, anytime something gets talked about a lot, there's somebody going to come along and say
Yeah.
that's no longer relevant. So
Yeah.
there is just this, think about it as a continuum. One side of the continuum, you have things getting done, moving forward, problems being solved, new paths being forged, things being moved out of the way, barriers being overcome. So we'll call that, for want of a better word, the masculine. On the other side, we have receiving, allowing things to come to you, peacemaking, uh, collaboration, non-competition, the opposite, like And that is the receiving. And you can think about it in terms of just the way our physiology is designed. Something is brought to you and you receive it. Your man comes to, you're in bed. There is a complementary set of energy. There's complementary body parts. So that is. So when people say she's alpha and she's in her masculine, she is making things happen. She's all business and getting done. And she doesn't really have time, often because it's just to sort of go like, sit back. And when a woman takes care of a man, when the guy comes home and she won't let him, no, I'll get your dinner and everything like that, she's actually not being feminine. She's in her masculine. He's in his feminine because he's receiving. So so it people think, oh, isn't that selfish? It's how you get it's how you get recharged. You're plugging. I have to plug you in. If I don't plug you in and you go, take it in from your boys, take it in from your daughter, from your husband, yes, I am the queen, then how can you possibly put it out when you have to make things happen? You don't have your energy replenished. So it's a circle. It's reciprocity. It's being able to be on one side or the other. And it's not being stuck on one side. And a lot of women are getting stuck on one side, and a lot of men are getting stuck on the feminine. Make it happen for me. Make it happen for me. Um, uh, it's a strange thing. They think they're actually. You talk about they're not actually being in their masculine. They think it's masculine to have their woman wait on them. It's feminine. You tell them that, yeah, why your job is to look after your woman, your girl, your partner. Doesn't matter. It's not, by the way, it's not anything to do with gender. It's the same thing in same-sex relationships. You've got to have that, someone typically is a little bit more in their masculine and someone's a little more in their feminine. So, so just think about it. And I'm sure some high-powered women entrepreneurs. I know tons of them. I mean, and they get stuff done. And to be in relationship with them means that man has to really level up because she has to feel okay with letting go. And it's a really important thing. She really has to feel okay with surrendering to the situation. A lot of women get so, they're making so many things happen that they won't let you do anything because they
Yeah.
want to be done a certain way.
So in reality, it's just about balance for both.
Yeah.
The balance of your masculine and feminine for both partners and being able to come together when each of them is in the other.
And not getting triggered by masculine and feminine. Because I know some women who say, have you seen me? I'm in 8-inch heels. I'm never out of heels. I'm in skirts. I'm super feminine. And I will talk to them. Your presentation is very feminine, but your energy is very masculine. And same with guys. You can say to guys like, you're in your feminine. They think, are you kidding me? Like, have you seen me? You see what the stuff I'm into? I know, but you're always receiving and taking and having things come to you. Your partner wants you to take care of her.
Yeah.
What does that look like? And they go, oh, they're not being. That doesn't mean, you don't want to be triggered by the terminology, I guess is what I'm saying.
Wow. Also much to take in, but I mean, this has been a really very enlightening
we talked about
conversation.
so many things. And
I
it's so much fun.
know. I love it. And I hope the audience got something out of it too. But I would love for you to share where people can find you for your coaching services and any other services you want to share.
Absolutely. So there's two things that I do. I'm actually a women's business coach, and my focus is on, I have a bias. I think I mentioned it earlier. I believe that women's intuition actually will lead them to be successful entrepreneurs. And it's when they deny and ignore their intuition and try to box themselves into following some sort of methodology and getting their masculine that they lose their focus. And so what I like to do is help them take their intuition and what they're feeling about their business and translate that into strategic, strategy. So I love that. I'm a long years and years of being in business. So that's my business coaching, and my couples and men's coaching. And I do work with women. It's just that, we all need to have a little niche. So I call myself a man coach, is focused on helping men primarily in their middle years around a whole bunch of things. You can just come to my website and there's an inquiry form on there. I had the unfortunate experience of having my Instagram hacked. So my Instagram disappeared about just before Christmas, on my birthday, actually, the 28th of December. So I'm rebuilding my Instagram, which is a lesson for people that you can't build your business. I don't, but for people who have hundreds of thousands of followers that are tapped into building their business around their social media, you don't have a mailing list, if you don't know who the people are, all of a sudden one day it may be gone because you're using a third party to host your information,
Right.
and they control you. So www.practicalmasculinity.net. So it's important.net.
Okay.
They can also book and they can book some time to talk to me. So this has been lovely. I enjoyed it. We could talk so many things. I love talking about stuff and relationships and what happens as we get
Really
older.
digging in. Yeah.
Good stuff.
Well, Kevin, I'm so grateful for the conversation, and I'll include all that in the show notes. And yeah, it was great,
Okay.
great
Thank
chatting.
you.
Thank you so
Thanks so
much.
much. Pleasure. Take care now.